I'm back from a wonderful surgeon. The guy did a great job on me. And so I'm back, ready to go to work. Thanks a
Awesome.
lot, guys.
We're glad you're here, Mr. Taylor. Vince Pettis? Here. Laurie Searles here. Sam Trimble?
Present.
And Al Velarde hopefully will join us soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
For the record, Gary Gondara, Mike Rosales, and Michael Nahara have resigned, and their entities are working on replacement.
Thank you, Ms. Kilgore. Could we all stand and say the pledge to the flag, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay. And that would take us to our first agenda item, our staff recognition. We have some really amazing people here, 20 and 25 years of service.
Yes, ma'am. And we will start with 20 years of service, and she's just walking in the door. Miss Carol
Yes, ma'am.
One thing for the picture, and so Ms. Pearl doesn't have to walk too far. She works in our residential department. I think you've been in several different departments over the years, and she is just a wonderful lady, and we're very happy that she has stayed with us for 20 years. And kind of one of the originals. So, Pearl, thank you so much.
Guys, come on over a little bit more.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
If y'all kind of bunch up, we can get a
Yes, busy,
picture.
guys.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
You started working here when you were like 5 years old.
Oh, this is
So you started here when you were 5 or 6 years old? That's impressive.
No. I went to the Last Supper.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Pearl. We really appreciate your service and everything. All right, the next employee we have with 20 years of service is Melissa Fernandez. Ms. Fernandez.
All right.
Zipper Records, right?
Yes, I did.
And has worked her way up, and she's now commercial senior appraiser over there. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Plus, Ms. Fernandez was the regional director for the Texas Association of Assessing Officers for this region of Texas. She served as director, and then of course she served as several offices in the local chapter. So we're very proud of her.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, big smiles, everybody.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
We got a bunch of them.
Miss Adela, come on up. She's very shy. 20 years of service with her. You were in Central Records at Home Bank, and now she's in Deeds and Exemptions, and handles all of those wonderful people who call and say, I'm over 65, and she goes, I'm not. Still not. So thank you, Adela, for all your service. Wait, get us a picture. Where's my later? Yes, sir. Oh, it's under another name. We call her Adela. Her name's Maria. But we call her Adela.
That's the name.
Thank you very much, Adela. Now we go to 25 years of service. So our folks here, I'm so excited for them, and I'm so proud of them. Ms. Hades Cisneros, come on up, Hades. I want to tell a little story about Hades. Back when we had data entry, you had entry clerks. She was a data entry clerk and had been here for quite a few years. Well, when we upgraded to a new camera system, new computer system, we didn't need them. And she said, well, what am I going to do? I said, you're going to make a great appraiser. Oh, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I said, yes, you are. She's one of our top senior appraisers in commercial. So she's done a great And last but certainly not least, Mr. James Thompson, 25 years.
All right.
My lag man. James is a graduate of Texas A&M, and so when he was first hired, he was hired to do our agricultural and land. And I was doing land at the time in commercial. And so I got to work with him at that point. Now he's our director evaluation. So.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. And board members, every time we do this, I thank you, and I want to continue thanking you for allowing us to recognize the tenure of our employees and let them be part of the process and to meet our board members. So thank you so much.
I think that I can speak for the whole board. We really appreciate the fact that you recognize and have an amazing staff. Thank you.
Right. And when we have our managers meeting after this meeting, we call everybody back up and we have cake. Sorry guys, you don't get cake.
I feel a little left
But we have
out.
the staff, so.
So that'll take us to our next agenda item, public comment. Is there any?
Madam Chairman, there is no public comment.
Okay, no public. And that will take us to item number 3, the approval and signing of the minutes from May the 16th, 2019 meeting. Do I have a,
Move to approve the minutes? Second.
thank you, motion made by Vince Pettis, seconded by Sam Trimble. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. And that will take us to the review and approval of the financial reports for April, May, and June of 2019.
Good evening, Rosa Goldman, Chief Financial Officer. We are presenting the financial report for April, May, and June 2019. The financial report contains the balance sheet, report of revenues, expenditures, and changes in cash balance, the investment report, and the note to the financial report. As you can see, for the 3 months that we are presenting, we didn't have any account that went over budget on those 3 months. Do you have any specific questions? Our litigation reserve also continues to be the same balance. We haven't used anything from debt reserve. So we still have the $676,876.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Ms. Goldman. No questions. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by Ronnie Lowenfield, seconded by Chuck Taylor to approve our financial reports for April, May, and June of 2019. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We're at number 5, our monthly health benefit and dental insurance plans for April, May, and June.
Okay, so for April, we had a balance of $435,593. For May, a balance of $492,123. And June, $515,100.52. We have a page, I think about 3 sheets down, that shows the previous 2 fiscal years. And, we can compare June to June to June. In 2016-17, we had for June a balance of $625,887. For last year, which was 2017-18, as of June, we had $414,151, and then now this June we have $515,000. Are there any questions?
No questions? Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Ms. Stolman. And that was for information only. That'll take us to number 6, discussion and possible action regarding EPCAD's health and dental insurance renewal.
Madam Chairman, our insurance expires the end of September.
Yes, ma'am.
So we bring this to the board now, so we have plenty of time to approve, disapprove, answer questions, any comments. Plus, we have time to sign up the employees before it expires at the end of September. I'm going to have Mike Dennis. He is our broker who has gone out and solicited quotes from different providers. And I'm going to let him kind of walk you through it, and then we'll answer any questions. And we do have a further presentation if you want more information.
Okay,
But I think you're going to be very happy. It's a little different than what I thought it was going to be at the end of last week. We have maybe a new provider we want to talk to you about. So,
Very
Mr.
interesting.
Dennis,
Okay.
if you want to, wherever you are, come on up. You all have a packet. It says Compass Benefits. It's this folder, this kind of manila folder, and all the information he's going to talk about is in that so that you can follow along. It says Compass Benefits on it. That has all the information that you'll need, the comparables, and his recommendation letter.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michael Dennis. I'm with Compass Benefits. I'm the broker for El Paso Central Appraisal District. Today, we're going to talk about a fun topic that everybody loves, which is health insurance and dental insurance. In your packet, on the left-hand side, you will find the recommendation letter. And on the right side, you will find the market analysis for the health insurance, dental insurance, and the carriers that I went out to, and also the rate history for the district. If you take the first spreadsheet on your left side of your packet, that is the spreadsheet we're going to concentrate on, and that is the health insurance renewal, okay? If you take a look at the first page, it might be a little frightening. It says that your health insurance renewal numbers are going up by 8.6%. What TML did was they went out to the stop loss market and got another stop loss carrier. If you look at the next page, TML with going to ISU, we are going to lower the cost by about 5.4%. However, they are doing that by lowering your claims pool. What that means is that they are, in a sense, transferring some of the risk from the stop loss carrier to the district. And that's not really advisable at the moment. The history for the claims within the district has been a little rough in the past 2-3 years. All right, so what the district needs is less risk, not more risk. Blue Cross also have provided a very, very, very competitive quote. Their benefits also is slightly better than what is currently available with TML. They are improving the out-of-pocket maximum from $5,500 to $4,500. So if we move over to that plan, it helps the employees. They are also providing, in a sense, a teledoc program. They call it Virtual Visit MD Live.
Is that across all of Blue Cross Blue Shield now? Have they adopted that almost?
They are pretty much adopting that throughout Blue Cross Blue Shield programs. And it's a great program if an employee has a flu and they're bedridden. They can do a teleconference with a doctor and have a prescription filled and sent to Walgreens or CVS and get that filled without going to actually visit a doctor. It's a great program, free of charge. And by going to Blue Cross Blue Shield, there is a savings about 7%. The big difference is this. Currently, you are self-insured. If we go to Blue Cross Blue Shield, it's a fully insured program. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages of fully insured programs. First of all, there are no additional liabilities for the district. As long as all the premiums are paid, then any claims that might hit late in the contract year, it's Blue Cross's responsibility, not the district's. That's one big advantage. Now, there is a disadvantage to going fully insured. Right now, you're self-insured. If you have a fantastic claims year next year, the unused money stays at the district. That's your current plan, self-insured plan. If you go to a fully insured plan, if you have a fantastic year, all that money that's not used to pay claims stays with Blue Cross. That is the disadvantage. And as I mentioned earlier, it looks like you may have a trend right now that it might be safer to go with Blue Cross, because I don't think you will have a lot of savings next year. Last year, we had a very, very bad year when it comes to claims. You have almost hit the cap for claims, and that's not a good thing for self-insurance programs. It tells this other self-insurance companies that the organization is very high risk. And the only saving grace was prescription rebates. Without prescription rebates, you might have hit the cap. This year, we're running better. However, 3-year records indicate that, this might be an anomaly. Next year, you're going to be close to what they are proposing. So it's a safer bet to go to Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's a fully insured plan. We can't get a rate guarantee. However, this is what I do. I'll go out each and every year and shop the market and try to provide the best benefit for the lowest cost available. Any questions so far? Okay, now that's the health insurance. Next, the next spreadsheet is your dental insurance. It's pretty much a no-brainer. The benefit level is pretty much the same as what you currently have. $50 deductible, 100% for preventative care, 80% for basic services, 50% for major services. The only main difference from TML to standard, which we are recommending, is that if you go to an out-of-network provider, it's paid at a 90% usual and customary rate, not at the 80%. So there's a little bit of savings for the employees also in that regards. So our recommendation is to change carriers. Well, in a way, you have to. If you leave TML, they provide both the health and dental. And if you eliminate the health, since it's in the same claims pool, you have to move the dental also. And our recommendation is to go to standard. Any questions on that side? Yes, we also have the carrier list, and most of the people declined to quote or sent us a declination letter because of 3 reasons. Due to the claims history of El Paso Central Appraisal District, their lack of competitiveness, and also it's their underwriting guidelines. It's outside of their underwriting guidelines. So that's the reason why. And some of the carriers, for example, United Healthcare, they declined to quote because we currently utilize United Healthcare's network. Aetna, they did quote through a subsidiary called Meritain, and that is in the spreadsheet. Of course, but they were way ballpark when it comes. So
One thing that we were surprised by, and I asked Mr. Dennis to follow up, is Blue Cross has not quoted anything to us in at least 10 years. And if they did quote at the beginning, it was very, very high. We just could not reach it. So when we got this quote, I said, let's double check and make sure that there wasn't some kind of error or something going on. So we did do a follow up, and this is Blue Cross, and our understanding is Blue Cross is expanding into organizations such as ours and sizes such as ours. So we're very pleased to see a real competitive, a savings for the district and a savings for the employees, and maintaining benefits, plus getting an extra benefit. If you look at in the healthcare with the TML ISU, to get the teledoc, you would have to add another $141 to the monthly rate that they're quoting. So it'd go from $650 to $791 to get the same thing we'd be getting from Blue Cross at $638, because it comes with it. So that I was very, very pleased to see that.
Is there a risk in your eyes of a massive increase after year one with Blue Cross?
yes,
This is a very competitive.
yes, they're, in my opinion, they're buying the market. They're buying your business. But why not? My opinion is that next year I'm going to go through the same thing and go through the process, do the analysis. I'll present to you which direction that you need to take. And if they want to buy the business and save the district money, why not?
I mean, this is out-of-pocket employee between the dental and health right now. I mean, this is like a $60+ savings a month.
Yes,
That's just
Yes.
for an individual
yes,
Right.
with better coverage
yes,
Yes, sir.
with the teledoc.
yes.
And Blue Cross has a huge network.
Yes, they
Yeah, their
have the
network,
biggest
that was-
network
yeah.
in
Well,
the nation.
teledoc, I think, is an even more powerful tool in a community like El Paso. We have this
Yes.
aversion to seeing the doctor, and so I think that's huge in a community here where it's simple, it's free of charge,
Right.
gets people hopefully seen rather than just letting it go.
And teledoc is becoming very popular for that very reason. You can just call them on and do it, and not have to go in, wait in a waiting room with a bunch of other sick people, try to get an appointment. You got teledoc, so it's very new. I think it's been around a couple of years, but it's really expanding. So we'd like to offer that for. I mean, it's no extra fee. We can offer that to our employees.
For the record, it's at 5:25. Mr. Alvelarde joined us. And yes,
So the employee only cost, so per month is $638.96.
Yes,
And this is something that I brought up at the county is I of all the benefits, when we factor in salary, retirement, I think healthcare is one of the more important items, and I think something whether it be this year or in the future that I think the board need to consider is 638 just for an employee only option is pretty significant, and if we had this discussion at the county, where we try to benchmark where our organization stands, relative to other entities, the city and some of the school districts, but that's the 638 is a lot for an employee only plan. And I know, I guess, you require your employees, so if they want to cover their spouse or
They have
family
to pay
members, they have to cover
100%.
that, themselves. And my concern with that is that, look, something that I think that you should be concerned about is as you're trying to attract. I'm really glad to see that you have workers here that have a very long tenure, and I think that says a lot, about the workforce. But if you're trying to attract a younger workforce, if you're trying to attract millennials, I mean, that's really a high cost. And I can't imagine, working for an organization like this and having to bear the cost of insurance for, my spouse and a child. I mean, what does that come out to?
Well, we're 100% participation, so the district pays 100% of the health care for the employees. So that $638.96 that you see, the district pays. The employee, if they have their family and their spouse, will pay $1,231 which is down from what they're currently paying of 1,450. And that's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Actually, the calculation is that you subtract 638.96 from
From-
$1,231.
Right, because we pay the employees. So
Yes.
it's basically $600 for the family coverage for spouse and
district
children
does
that the employee will be having. So you're talking about $300 a paycheck for them to plan. So it's a lot less. The less we pay for the employees, then you subtract that out of that, and that's what's left over that the employee pays for the family. So really, Commissioner Pettis, they're only paying about $600 a month for total family coverage.
So you'll cover the employee
Yes, sir.
only cost
Yes, sir. Yes,
at
sir.
100%.
Yes, sir. Just like we have been. And we did do a survey of appraisal districts. All of your appraisal districts, because of who we are and the sizes that we are, they do pay 100%. Oh, they're just like us. We're 100% we
All
cover.
hiring right now.
I know. Actually,
already had interviews?
it's been filled. Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Well, and I guess, just, if at some point you're just looking at that, if that is the case, and this was something I brought up with the county as well, you again, and just being mindful of how competitive, the labor market is right now, I'd really look at the spread of the way that's, for the employees, then you might want to consider then, perhaps some cost to the employee, but, making the family plans, more affordable. At the county, we have, the employee-only plan, and then we have the employee plus one, and then we have the employee plus a child, and then, family members where there may be more than one involved. But I think it's just really important in retaining like I said, a younger workforce.
Definitely.
Because that's...
And to respond to that, Commissioner Pettis, we did look at that, and we did split out, employee plus one child, employee plus spouse, and we found that our rates actually went up because it removed the numbers from the others, because we don't have, 3,000 employees, or as some school districts, I think EPASD has 7,500 employees. So we don't have that large employee base. So when we started separating it out, because that was our goal this year, is to try to separate it, it actually came out higher. So we felt like when we got this from Blue Cross, we thought, well, $600 a month, letting them know in advance. And that's another reason we want to do this now, is so that we can let them know in advance. But it actually they will get a savings this year on their families. We have about, I think, 4 or 5 families that are covered is all we have. So, and looking at the overall savings to the district, that's the direction that we went, since we only have 4.
So then is the recommendation from
Yes,
Mr.
is to-
Dennis or Ms. Kilgore that we go with the Blue Cross for
With Blue
this
Cross for
year?
health and with Standard for dental.
Standard?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
For dental and Blue Cross for health, which
Yes,
is in both cases showing a savings to the district
ma'am.
employees.
Yes.
District and employees, yes. ma'am.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarification? But you said 4, you only have 4 families on,
For employees that have family coverage.
And it's the same at the county where, our family plans are just so expensive that, and it's not, so basically I would imagine that, or at least hopefully, that a spouse or somebody else is getting insurance elsewhere.
yeah, that's, I guess.
Right,
my
and that's what
follow-up
it
was gonna
is.
be
They're getting
where
insurance.
the other families?
They get the families and spouses are carried under their the spouse that works, their insurance, or we have divorce, and the children are under the spouse that the court has said has to cover the children. The families that we are covered here is because of wives or husbands don't work,
Okay,
and so they cover them.
okay.
But
It's-
like I said, we just have 4.
It's not only the public entities, all, even private industries, if they provide health insurance, that's the nature of the beast right now. Dependent costs are very, very, very high. Unless the participating organization contribute a certain portion for the dependents, generally they cannot afford to have dependents on the plan unless, as you mentioned, Commissioner Perez, the spouse has coverage through their work, and also children can get private insurance. But other than that, that's unfortunately the nature of the beast at this moment.
And this is basically $592 a month, so it'll be right under 300, which is a savings
Yeah, that's
from
nice.
anything we've had. And we have had some employees that have gone outside for the family, but they've come back because, we are. But again, board members, this is something we look at diligently every single year to see. In fact, we have in the past adjusted the rate that the appraisal district pays for the employees to allow more of a fairer number on the families. So we do look at that.
So my background is not in insurance. So the $515,152 that's sitting in the TML, I guess, in our self-insurance account right now, what happens to that if we go to?
We still have to use that money. Sorry, Gabrielle Melendez, Chief HR Officer. We still need that money in those accounts so that we can continue paying whatever claims would come through.
Any late claims or anything that,
They're not going to process immediately. As you know, a lot of times providers, they have a filing window. So as soon as we can get those providers to file their claims to TML, we still have to have those money in that account to pay those off. But there's a run out period.
What's the run out period on that? Because I can't imagine it's too long, right?
So far, what we have, the report that you have received from Ms. Rosa Goldman is up to the end of June. So there are still claims going through for July, August, and September, 3 months.
So it'll be probably by the end of the year,
So
maybe
at the
even.
end of the year then, or whenever
Then
that
whatever
occurs.
funds are left, we will quit contributing into that fund as of October 1. It'll go into Blue Cross. So whatever claims are out there will come out of that, and then whatever is left comes back to the district under TML. And then that will go into either a general fund will come to the board and ask you, what do you want to do with it? Do we want to put it in a reserve for healthcare, or do we want to just give it back to the entities, which we can?
But you
But we
will
wanna
come
make
back
su-
if there's
That would
any.
come-
Right. We get it back
savings.
and then it goes
Okay.
back, right. We just want to make sure all claims, when we had ABA, it was like a year we were still getting claims from certain doctors because they just were not submitting them. Or there was a treatment that was going on for several months and they didn't bill until the treatment was over. So that will be something that we'll be having to watch. And Rosa Goldman will continue to watch the finances. And we'll give you a report every month on that. That's why we give you that healthcare report,
You'll see
so
them
you can
in-
see where we're at. So we'll continue to do that so you can see how the numbers are adjusting.
I think this is a proper time for me as a broker to maintain the health of the employee benefits program, especially when it comes to health insurance. I just need to let you know is that some of the money through the run out, you will have claims coming in October, November, and December. So you do have to have some money reserved to pay those claims. I also highly suggest that the board keep this in mind. You will need funds for next year. If Blue Cross, as somebody had mentioned, hey, they're buying the business, what's going to happen to the rates next year? If it goes up substantially and we have to go back to partially self-funded, if you don't have a cushion, a reserve to run the partially self-funded program, it's as an organization, you are taking additional risk that you shouldn't.
Is there a dollar figure per insured that you recommend when you look at that moving
For
forward?
a group of this size, I would feel comfortable of about $250,000. But there were a couple of years when it dipped below that amount, and I get a little nervous. But that's a good figure to have. I know it sounds a lot, but that's the safer direction to go.
Now, we'll continue to make our payment. Now, remember, we hold the checkbook on this. And with TML, we handle they tell us the claims and say, you owe us a check for X amount of dollars. We have to transfer the funds. So we have control of those funds. So we'll be watching those. And we'll still continue to make our payment into that for, August, September. Then as of October 1, it'll switch over, but we'll have those funds in there that we'll look at. then what we'll do, we'll come to the board, and when we feel pretty comfortable, you'll see a monthly report on it. Ms. Goldman will keep track of that. And when we get to where we feel pretty comfortable that there's no more claims out of that, we'll more likely be coming to the board and say, okay, can we take those, what's left over, and put them into a healthcare reserve for not knowing what's going to happen the next year? Because you're very right. I mean, Blue Cross may say, okay, I've got you. Now we're going to, well, no, we can go someplace else, you know. But I feel like for this year, I mean, it's a savings, and I think we need to take advantage of it. So that's my
Hey,
recommendation.
while the sun shines. Yes.
In the future, I guess, I wonder if there's probably is a value to having your HR department take a survey of all your employees, and I guess, and again, where they fall in terms of participation.
We did.
Okay.
We did, and I'll tell you right now, if we were to, this plan they like very much. They're very happy with this plan. They would like to continue, you know, having the insurance. If we were to make them choose dental over health, if we had to save money and keep it self-insured like we're doing, or keep it, you know, 100%, they would give up dental. 64% said, I'll give up dental to keep my health care. So they're very much responding. We had, out of 140 employees, we had 130 that responded. So we had a really good, 98% are very, very happy with the plan and would like to stay with a similar plan. But they're very happy with savings. You know, I mean, they don't know about this. We just got all the numbers finalized this week, so we wanted to. If we were to totally make the employees pay for a portion of it, we would lose almost 60% of our employee base, which would mean the price would go up, the cost per employee would go up. So having a very healthy number means 100% participation. So that's why we have the employees and of course not the families. The families, does that help? Yeah.
So
They're very, very
based
thankful.
on 100% participation and it being covered by the district, so that at 60 plus savings on an individual account, have you calculated what the savings for the district is then by moving this?
Overall, we'll figure if it's 60 plus
I
times
don't know the
140
participation,
times,
okay.
you know.
Well, it's right here.
Yeah.
On the first page, the maximum
So
per
100
year is about 1.475 mil versus Blue Cross 1.370 mil. So it's about $100,000 of savings.
I mean, every little bit helps when, you know, when we're trying to watch our budgets.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, did we budget for what we have when we set our budget? I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. So we will see a savings when we move plans. There will be that savings there that can be going forward, the cushion that we're going to need.
Yeah, if I remember, I think we even
Yes.
expected a significant increase.
We
Yeah.
expected an increase, yes.
A significant.
did. We
budgeted
expected
for a
from-
significant increase.
From what we
too.
were hearing in the industry and what we were seeing in our claims, we were expecting a significant. So,
Yes.
so we
Blame-
do have that.
Blame me for that because the initial year, there were some large claims that we were not expecting. So I didn't realize that at the end, somebody like Blue Cross and Blue Shield will step up and say, we want you, and here's what we're willing to pay.
Nice to be wanted for a
It
change.
is.
Because usually they don't want us, you know.
So you need a
We
motion.
need a
Yes.
motion.
We need action.
We're recommending, like I said, Blue Cross for health, and for the
Standard
dental,
for
we're
dental.
recommending standard.
Yes.
And have you all looked into consumer-driven health plans? I know that's
Yes.
something that we've moved into at the county, and I think the city has done the same. And I mean, a lot of employees have found it, you know, more cost beneficial for their particular situation. I mean,
We're
is
so
that-
small, we don't see that cost savings like the larger cities,
Okay.
county schools see. Kind of unique for our size, so.
So with that, do we have a, Mr. Tremble, you look like
Sure.
you'd like to make
No,
a
I
motion.
mean, I'm like, get it signed tomorrow before it's, you know. I just keep looking at this, waiting to see something that raises my eyebrow, but I'm not seeing it.
No,
So
and
I
let me
don't-
tell you, we went with a fine tooth comb, plan per plan, and other than a savings in the stock, in the, where you see the out-of-pocket savings there, including the teledoc. There was no negative, the plan was mirror, plus extras.
Well, I would make a motion then, in order to not only save employee money, save district money, and improve coverage, that we move to Blue Cross Blue Shield for health and standard for dental moving
Second.
forward.
We have a motion made by Mr. Trimble and seconded by Mr. Lowenfield to go with Blue Cross Blue Shield and standard for our dental. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. And I have to tell you, when I walked in this afternoon, Mr. Dennis looks at me with a big smile. He goes, "I've got great news." And I thought, gee, nobody ever says that. This was great news. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's the result for us too, because we're in the process of marketing our insurance.
I have
We're
to
about
tell
the
you all,
same size agency,
my
I think.
son is
How
a
many staff do
doctor,
you have?
and he
140.
today
We're a
I
little
called him and he
smaller
goes,
than you at
he was
130.
doing this,
Try,
the video
have
doc,
him
and I
check
said,
Blue
"You're
Cross.
kidding,
We
you're a
were-
we
movie
have Blue
star
Cross.
now."
Oh, do you? Oh,
It's
okay.
definitely-
Well, then
so
they
cool.
should come back.
It was
with-
hilarious.
Yeah, good.
Just depends on the industry.
You're right.
That also makes a difference.
Right. And
This
if,
is
you know,
nice.
Industry you fall in.
right, exactly.
That would take us to agenda item number 7, the presentation regarding entities certified appraisal roll.
Board members, I know you've heard on the news, and we David Stone and I gave a presentation to the city council, and then we met, gave a presentation to the county commissioners court, and then David and I both have met individually with Vince Pettis. So we felt like we would want to give you an overview and a presentation of what's going out there, and maybe clarify some misinformation. What's reported is not always what is. So we thought we would go over this. Commissioner Pettis had asked us to bring it before the board. When an appraisal district receives the property records by no later than July 20th from the appraisal review board, then the appraisal district must certify those values as a certified appraisal roll and turn them over to the taxing entities by July 25th. This year, we were very concerned, and I'm gonna kind of preclude this before David gets into the numbers. We were very concerned about all the changes with legislation, so we felt like we needed to try to get the roll certified sooner. So what we did is the appraisal review board did a great job, and they turned the records over to us. 95% of protests had been heard by the 16th of July, and we certified by the 17th. And we sent them out. Then we met with the taxing entities, and we normally meet with them between that time, but because we were in a hurry. Now, we had met with the taxing entities. Remember, I tell everybody we meet with them in March and April, and we had some taxing entities that were very concerned that over a time period of 9 to 12 months, what we certify goes down. Well, the certified number is a live number. It constantly changes throughout the year. The day we certified, the next day it's gone down, so that is a live number. So we started looking at things. Now, I will take responsibility that when we started looking at everything, we waited until we started getting numbers back after the protest started. And we decided just that week that we were certifying and the roll was turning over, we looked at a history of the loss that had happened to the different entities. And we looked at the concern of a couple of the school districts that they had about losing money. So we did make a decision. I made the decision. That's my decision to make. And I did make a decision to be very conservative. And maybe I was a little ultra conservative, but we were having some concerns from some entities. Now, through all of these meetings, we've come up with a new plan for next year. When we meet with everybody in March and April with the entities, we're going to put together some very rough estimates about the percentage of potential loss that can happen. When we certify, we turn over 3 totals. We turn over a total of appraised value that's already been heard and approved by the appraisal review board, or that did not have a protest. Then we turn over another total that is everything that is still under protest. And then we turn over a total adding the 2 together. So they have those numbers. What is turned over is still under protest is where a chief appraiser can go in and either not make any kind of adjustments or make adjustments for potential loss. And that's what we did. So I'm going to have David go over some numbers. Commissioner Pettis, we have added some more information to it that I think you'll be interested. And we actually did somewhat of a matrix on legislation, on litigation, so that you can see that. So David, if you want to, and if you want to ask questions during, you're of course more than welcome to, but we might answer it in the presentation. So just maybe jot it down and then we'll discuss it. There is no action for this, it's just a presentation.
Thank you.
Board, I apologize in advance. This is kind of inside baseball, and there's a lot of numbers, and it's not very exciting, but I'll try not to put everybody to sleep. Appraisal districts were established in Texas by the state legislature to appraise all taxable property in a fair and uniform manner to all taxpayers, so they would be treated in an equitable manner. The appraisal district has served the people of El Paso County since 1980. Why were appraisal districts formed? Separation of responsibility. Entities taxing property do not set the values. So people can't accuse the taxing entities of jacking up the values so they can get more tax revenue. We are a break on the taxing entities. We decide what the values are, and they decide what the tax rates are. Lower administrative costs. There's only one office appraising properties. Before the PVDO bill passed, every taxing entity had their own property tax office. And you might get one value from the city, one from the county, and a different one from the school district. Standardized appraisal practices. There's one appraisal. The appraisals are all done in the prescribed way according to the dictates of the legislature. And taxpayer convenience. There's one appraisal notice and one place to protest your value. Before the PVDO bill passed, if you didn't like your value, you had to go to the county and protest it. You had to go to the city and protest it. You had to go to the school district and protest it. So it was much less convenient for the taxpayers. Okay, certification. This is the most important job of the chief appraiser and the appraisal district. Every year, the chief appraiser is required to certify an appraisal roll to the taxing entities. The statutory deadline for that is July 25th. And as Dinah said, we were early this year, which hasn't happened in a long, long time. The appraisal roll contains two types of properties: properties that have been approved by the ARB and properties that have not been approved by the ARB. Properties approved by the ARB. These are properties whose protest was heard by the ARB, or that their protest was settled in an administrative hearing with an appraiser, or they withdrew the protest, or the property was not protested at all. Very, very important right here. Values of properties approved by the ARB may still be changed in the future. Even if they go to the ARB and the ARB sets the value, that's not it. There's still more. So how can ARB values be changed? Well, there's four main things. There can be late protest filed if there was no protest on the property. The ARB determines whether that's a valid protest or not. There's a limited number of reasons in the code. Or a taxpayer can file a motion to correct the roll. Or a taxpayer may file a late exemption. On homestead type exemptions, you have 2 years to file. So I can go back 2 years if I forgot to file my homestead exemption. And last of all, our favorite: litigation, mediation, and arbitration. So values not approved by the ARB and still under protest. These are we're required by law to have 95% of the taxable value approved by the ARB by July 25th. There's always something left over that doesn't get finished. So the question becomes, what value do you report on the property that's not finished? Because technically that value has not been approved by the ARB. You have three choices. You can use last year's value. You can use the value of what the owner thinks the value should be, which we never know because they don't tell us. Or the chief appraiser can make an estimate of what the value will be. That is the method that we use at the El Paso Central Appraisal District. So how do you decide what the estimate, the value is going to be is? The main goal of the CAD in estimating the value still under protest is we want the taxing entities to have at least the value that we certify to them on July 25th, that your value will never drop below that. That's our goal. Now, obviously, we can't control everything that happens, but our goal is to take enough off of the property still under protest so that of all the value left, when we report it to you on July 25th, you will never drop below that value during the lifetime of the roll. We determine the historical loss and roll value. We go back and we look at what happened in the past, and then we reduce the value of the counts that are still under protest by that amount, basically. So what was different this year that has everybody up in arms? The past several years, we would look at the change in value of the roll over a one-year time period. So when I'm certifying in July of 2019, I would look at the 2018 roll and say, okay, from July 2018 to July 2019, how much did it change? For the 2017 roll, from July 2017 to July 2018, how much did it change? Then we would get the average change over 1 year for every year and say, okay, that's how much I'm going to take off the accounts that are still under protest in 2019. Well, when we started doing analysis this year, and the reason we did the analysis was we got complaints from school districts that there was some litigation and they were having to pay a lot in refunds and they didn't have the money to pay it. It was putting a crimp on their budget. So we decided to do an analysis and see, well, is there something that we can do better on our side so that they don't run into this problem? So this year, instead of only looking 1 year out in the future, we decided to look as far out in the future as we could. So when I look at the 2017, instead of just looking to see how did the values change from July 2017 to July 2018, I said, how does the value change from July 2017 to July 2019? And going back to 2016, from July 2016 to 2019, is there a difference? And to no one's surprise, actually, there was a big difference. This is kind of dense, so let me kind of explain to you what's going on.
And you have a copy of this if you're having trouble seeing it on the
This is
wall.
in your thing. Okay, so before anything happened, this was, and we're using the UMC because they have the least optional home exemptions of all the taxing entities and they're county-wide. So this was the value, about $34.4 billion on the roll before anything happened. So we did a calculation. Now, these numbers over here were calculations that would happen if we just went back and looked at 1 year. So you see, we started this program around 2012 of looking 1 year and seeing what happened. And we were pretty consistent, and we would take off about 1.2% of the total value of the roll every year. Well, when we kick these numbers out to lifetime, we found instead of, in 2017, instead of losing 1.2%, we lost 1.36%. That's not that bad. Well, the year before that, it was 1.74. The year before that, it's 1.6. I mean, all the way up to 2.78. So what we discovered was there's actually significant loss to the roll after the 1 year mark that we were looking at. And this is an evolutionary process. When we first started doing this, we would just look at the stuff that was under protest. Then we would look at historically how much did the ARB lower the property value of each class of accounts, like single-family homes or commercial homes. And then whatever historically the ARB did, we would just lower the existing properties by that much and say, call it a day, we're done. Well, one year I get a call from the city tax collector in March, and they said, what are you guys doing over there? And I'm like, what? And he said, we dropped below the certified value. And I'm like, well, you know, stuff happens to the roll. I have no control over it. The taxpayers totally control where they're going to file lawsuits, motions, whatever. I can't, you know, sorry, you know, we underestimated. I don't have a crystal ball. Well, that wasn't acceptable to the city. So we got an earful, and I said, and that was the year I said, okay, instead of just looking at what's under protest and estimating how much that's going to lose, I'm going to determine how much the roll loses over a year, and we're going to take that off and just allocate it amongst the accounts that are still under protest. Because remember, that's the only avenue that we have to make this adjustment. If the ARB approved that record, I cannot touch that value because that's the official value. The only values I can touch are the accounts that are still under protest. So what we said was, okay, we're going to take 1.2% of that. We're going to calculate what that is, and we're just going to subtract it from all the accounts that are still under protest, allocated amongst the ones that are under protest. Well, then, like I said, this year people were complaining about lawsuit losses. We looked, we saw we're actually losing more than 1.2%. We need to jack it up so people will be able to afford the refunds. So we calculated, and we said, okay, we're going to do, over the last 10 years, 2.78 is the highest loss we ever had. So we'll go ahead and use 2.8, and we'll knock that off of the roll this year instead of the 1.2. And then that'll cover everybody. Nobody should lose more than 2.8%. And then we said, you know, 2.8 is not that much off from 1.2. I mean, it's a little bit higher, but it's only like less than 2%. No big deal. Well, not no big deal, but everybody, okay, that's the way it is. Well, when we did that adjustment, we ended up knocking 62% off the value of every account that was still under protest. So before we did the adjustment, the value of all the accounts in 2019 that were under protest were $2.1 billion. It went down to about $800 million. We knocked off $1.3 billion from the appraisal roll. Now, one question I got from some entities is, well, why did you do that to me? Can't you do a different number for me and a different number for the city and a different number for the county? No, we can't. The way the system is set up, we cannot put individual values for individual entities. It has to be one value on the account, and it gets a portion to the entities. So now I know how much value I have to lose. So I look at all the kinds of accounts that are under protest. These are all the different property categories that we had, and all I did was we calculated the 2.8 off the total value. We calculated how much we're supposed to lose, which was going to be about $1.3 billion. And all I did is allocate it strictly according to how much value is in that account. So Category A1 property, single-family homes, had $508 million still under protest. That was actually about 24% of the value still under protest. So 24% of that 1.3 billion got subtracted off the A1s. Now, most of the stuff, it looks like there's a lot of different property categories under protest, but really the bulk of it is in 3 categories. We have the single-family homes, which was about 24%. We had commercial real property, which was about 44%. And we had business personal property, which was about 21%. So that's where the bulk of the value had to come off. This kind of makes it easier to see. The A1s are single-family homes. The B2s are apartment complexes. F1s are commercial real property. L1s are business personal property. So this year we took 24% off of the A1s, 2.3% off of the apartments, 43% off of the commercial, and 21% off the business personal property, and about 8% off of everything else. As you can see, the composition can change a lot from year to year of what's still under protest. Like, we had 24% of the value this year was in single-family homes. Last year was 42% of the value, and back in 2016 it was only 12% of the value. So there can be big fluctuations in the numbers. A particular interest right here is the 43% on commercial property. Last year it would have only been about 32%, but it's gone as high as 62%. So it makes a big difference on what's still under protest as to where that loss is going to get stuck. So basically, almost half of that total 1.3 billion loss is going to come out of commercial real property. So what happened? Well, before we did any kind of adjustment, these are the values. So we had a 4.2% increase in single-family homes. We had
7.2 in F1.
Yeah, sorry, line. Yeah, here it is. We had 7.2% increase on commercial property, and we had 9.75% increase on business personal property. And as the mayor was so fond of pointing out, we had $273 million in new construction in commercial. So we had a 7.2% increase. 3.4% of that was new construction. Overall, the hospital had a 4.86% increase in value over last year. All right, so what happened after we did the adjustment? So after we did the adjustment, the category A's dropped to 2.97. The commercial dropped to a negative 0.08%, so basically zero. And the L1s dropped to a negative 0.14, which is also basically zero. So basically, we wiped out all the gains we had in commercial and business personal property, but that was because that's where the bulk of the value that we could take off the roll existed. If the composition had been different, like if we had more single family, then the single families would have dropped more, and we probably would have had an increase in the commercial value. It's strictly due to the allocation of the accounts that are still under protest.
And board members, this is strictly a calculate. The value is still there. The value of the certified roll still includes that 7% increase in commercial properties. What we've done is just allocated it differently, but the value is still there. They're going to get the tax bill. They're going to be billed on what the value was in the notice or what the ARB set the value on. So nothing was lost. It was just in the calculation to be able to tell them you've got X amount of dollars of potential change.
Okay, so bottom line, what was the impact? We lost 1.2%, 330 million off of the single-family homes. We lost 578 million, or 6.8%, off of the commercial, and we lost almost 300 million or 9% off of the business personal property.
And remember, commercial is higher because that's the one that had most of the protests still outstanding.
So every year we give all the entities a spreadsheet going back to 1994 and tell them what happened to their taxable value from the time the preliminary totals went out, which is our initial values on April 30th, to the certified totals on July 25th, and what they lose. Now, as you can see on the hospital, the 5-year average is about 3.05% loss. Because we increased the amount of the loss by recalculating the likely rendered adjustment, they ended up being 3.84. So they're about 0.79% over what their normal loss was. But that's not, I mean, back in 2013, it was a 3.96% loss, and we didn't increase the adjustment back then. So it's higher than everybody was expecting, but it's not totally out of line with the historical loss from preliminary to certified. Okay, this is hard to read, so you might want to look at your sheet. These are numbers for the county of El Paso because Wally Hargrove did some spreadsheets and he wanted some comparison numbers. This first one, this is comparing the current 2018 values to the likely rendered values for 2019, which were what were certified. The only categories, main categories that we had a loss in were the commercial F1s, which ended up with a $5 million loss, and the business personal property, which ended up with a $4 million loss. And we're talking $5 million to $4 million out of basically like a $42 billion roll. So that's why the change was basically zero. Okay, so Wally said, well, I want an apples to apples kind of comparison. Because here you're comparing your likely rendered adjustment for 2019 to the actual values on 2018. So we said, okay, let's look at the 2018 likely rendered when we certified to the 2019 likely rendered when we certified. What was the change? Again, we only had two categories of losses. The F1s, because that's where most of the properties were still under protest, we had a $15 million loss. And
B.
The apartment complexes had a $22 million loss. So we said, okay, let's disregard the likely rendered and let's just look at what the values would have been if we didn't take the likely rendered out. What were they in 2018 compared to 2019? And the only loss we ended up in was a category B of about $10 million. So most of the loss came because of the adjustment for likely rendered because we needed to increase the potential loss to the entities. So what is the effect of the LR adjustment on truth and taxation? With what Dinah said, I want to emphasize, this is an estimate of future roll value loss as expressed by the likely rendered adjustment. It's strictly for truth and taxation and planning purposes. The entities have to report those values because that's what the chief appraiser gave them, but these are what I call soft losses. You are not going to see those losses right now. All those accounts that are still under protest, when they settle, you're not going to see that much loss from those accounts. Where you're going to see the loss is in the accounts that the ARB had approved. But they're going to come back later on and say, hey, I still got a problem, you need to fix these accounts. So the increase in the likely rendered adjustment that we did, which basically went from 1.2 to 2.8%, will lead to a lower taxable value in 2019 than has occurred in the last few years because we were using a 1.2% discount, and now we're going to use a 2.8% discount. This drop may result in an increased effective tax rate because when they calculate your effective taxes, they basically say take your 2018 value times your 2018 tax rate, whatever that levy is, divide it by the 2019 value, and that should be the tax rate that you use this year. Now, it's not that simple because it's the government. Nothing's ever that simple. So there's a bunch of adjustments that you got to make, but that's basically the calculation. So it's possible, and in fact, I know it happened because I got an earful from a bunch of entities that their effective tax rate, because we lowered the amount so much, went up over their current 2018 tax rate, which they didn't like. So, but I want to remind everybody, the entities are not required to set their tax rates at or above the effective tax rate. That's just a number that the state says you'll get the same amount of taxes this year as you did last year, but you don't have to set the rate that high. If you think that our 2019 taxable value is too low, that I made too big of an adjustment, then you can set the rate lower. It's totally at the discretion of the entities. We don't set the tax rates. The taxing entities set the tax rates. All we're doing is telling them this is our estimate of what the value is going to be for the 2019 roll. When all is said and done, hopefully it won't ever drop below this. But you decide what your tax rate is going to be. Now, obviously, there's some ceiling stuff. You can't go much higher because then you run into the rollback rate. But it's up to the entities to decide what they want their tax rate to be. So, what is the effect of the likely rendered adjustments on the billing? When the bills go out to the taxpayers. When the bills go out to the taxpayers, they do not get billed at the likely rendered adjusted value. They get billed at what the value was when we sent the notice, unless they get their account settled by the ARB before the bills go out. So the entities will not experience any loss of these estimates until the account has gone through the equalization process. So like I said, these are soft losses. These are not hard losses. They have not occurred yet. They will occur in the future. And we're trying to estimate how much it's going to be. But it hasn't happened yet. So when the bills go out in October, if I said I'm knocking 62% off of the value. If there's a house out there that's $100,000, I knocked it down to $40,000 when I reported it to the entities. But when the bill goes out, the bill is going to go out at $100,000 if it hasn't been settled yet. And then sooner or later it'll get settled at whatever. But I'm not saying that I even expect that individual property to get settled at $40,000. I'm just saying there's going to be X number of dollars that is going to come off the roll, and I just allocated $60,000 to this property, but I'm not saying that property is going to get lowered $60,000. I'm saying there's going to be $60,000 overall that's going to come off the roll, probably from account that's already been approved by the ARB. So, as an illustration, let me walk you through the sample. We're using UMC for 2016. We're looking at the 2016 roll. When we ran the preliminary totals for UMC in 2016, the taxable value was $42.1 billion. That was on April 30th, 2016. We send 2 updates to the entities before we certify. One at the end of May, beginning of June. The other one at the end of June, beginning of July. When we ran the first update, the taxable value was $42.178, so it went up about $63 million. And you're like, well, how can it go up? It goes up because not all the business personal property has been processed by that time because they can file extensions to their rendition period. And also the large value accounts that Ward Law appraises for us are not done until the end of May. So when we get to this first update, excuse me, everything is finally settled on what value we want to go to the taxpayers. Then 1 month later, it dropped to $41.4 billion. So basically in 1 month's time, we lost, what is it, like $700 million strictly through the process. They talked to an appraiser, they went to the ARB, they got their value. And by the time we certified, we're down to $41.2 billion. So we lost about another $250 million in the next month by the time we certified. Okay? Now we have to do the likely rendered calculation because I need to see how much value I'm going to lose. So I knocked it down from 41.2 to 40.7. So basically, we took about $500 million off the roll. Now, remember, this year we took 1.3 billion. So basically, we took almost 3 times as much money off the roll this year as we did in 2016. But when the bills went out, we took the likely rendered adjustment off, so we jumped back up to 41,115. So that's what people actually got billed at. 1 year later, when we certified in 2017, we dropped to 40.8 billion. And these are for the reasons I said. There's no more timely protests at that point. So we've got late protests, we've got motions to correct the roll, we've got late exemption filings, we've got litigation, arbitration, mediation, all the other shuns. So that dropped to 40.8. Now remember, at this point in time, this is where it would have stopped. So I said, okay, I expected in 1 year's time to end up with $41.2 billion. That was my estimate. No, I'm sorry, 40.7 billion. And I ended up with 40.8. We're solid. But when I certified in 2019, I lost another 300 some odd million dollars off the roll after 1 year. So I thought I'd end up with 40.7, but I'm already down to 40.8. So I'm already 200 some odd million dollars in the hole from what I estimated the entities would have. So who's going to pay that? I mean, the entities didn't expect that. So that's comes straight out of your entity's pocket. When someone like Western Refinery settles a lawsuit 3 years later, and then they come to the entities and say, we need 300 grand to pay off Western Refinery, that comes out of your pocket. And we're short, because I told you were going to have $40.7 billion, and you only have $40.8 billion. Now, I want to emphasize, it is not the responsibility of their appraisal district to make these estimates and stick to them. This is a courtesy to the taxing entities that we're doing to try to help them out so that they don't end up short. Okay, let's talk about commercial property, because that was of particular concern to the city. Let's look at the green bars. These are permits for new commercial properties. In 2014, we had 416. 2019 is not finished. You can probably just blow that off. Last year, we had 321. So we're not going up, we're going down. Now, the remodel are kind of fluctuating, but there is no like great increase in commercial properties despite what you may hear from some sources. So these are not numbers for the hospital, these are numbers for the city, because I was trying to work with Robert Cortines and see, what's going on. So, 2014 preliminary to 2015 preliminary, and we're talking strictly commercial real property, F1s. We had an increase of $1 billion. In 2018 to 2019, we had an increase of $721 million. So that's cool. If you look at the yearly increases at preliminary, the increase we had this year was exactly the median of the last 5 years. We had a 9.8% increase in commercial values, and this is in the city of El Paso from last preliminary to this year's preliminary. Oh, that's exactly the median. Okay, so what about the change at certification? When we certified, last 2018's number was $7.2 billion for commercial property. After we did the likely rendered adjustment, it was 7.2. We ended up losing $11 million. Now remember, to you and me, $11 million is a lot of money. To this, we're talking $11 million out of a $7.2 billion pool. So it was a negligible loss. In fact, it was a 0.15%. That's not 15%, that's 0.15% loss. Now, you can see why somebody might be upset, because in all the other 4 years, we had a positive increase in commercial, even after we did the likely rendered adjustment. So this was concerning to people. But like I said, the reason we did that is because we discovered that we were underestimating the loss to the roll. And either we do it on the front end, or the entities ended up paying it out of their general fund on the back end. So, but if you look, the loss between the 2019 preliminary to the 2019 certified, we're still only at a median loss. They had worse losses in commercial in other years. It's not the best, it's not the worst. But, and if you look at the percentage decrease, it's still the median. It's right in the middle of everything. So these were not losses that were totally out of line. And, where did this come from? These are right in the middle of the averages. Okay, so this is some more analysis of F1s. Same thing, we're basically the change in preliminary to the certified, right in the middle. Again, there's two higher and two lower, so percentage-wise, we're in the same place. It's not something weird that never happened before, but look at the dollar loss. Prior years were 200 million, 150 million, 91 million. This year we're 520 million. Now remember, read the fine print. A lot of it depends on what's under protest at the time we certify, because that's where the losses have to go. As you can see, as you saw before, 42% of the stuff under protest was commercial. 42% of that loss was going to those accounts. That's why it lost so much. Look at this is strictly the loss due to the adjustment for likely rendered value. The other prior losses were like 3, 3.8, 2.1, 1.25. This year was 6.72. Now remember, overall, we were shooting for a 2.8% loss. But because of the distribution of the accounts that were under protest, the commercial property ended up with a 6.72% loss. Okay, there's been some talk in the media about what percentage residential is of the overall tax roll. So we went online to the Comptroller's property value study, and they have the category values for all the appraisal districts out there, that because everybody has to go through the Comptroller property value study. These are 2018 values, but some of them are 2017 because half the appraisal districts get done every other year. So when you look at it, like for instance, in Harris County, which is Houston, their category A property, which is single family homes, comprises 49.6% of their roll. Now these are market values, these aren't taxable values, because when we report to the state, we report the market value by category. So these would be dropped some by exemptions. Now, as you can see, that's like the lowest. No, Webb County, which is Laredo, is the only one lower than Houston. But like Fort Bend, which is a suburb of Houston, basically, almost 75% of their roll is residential property. The average is 56%. We have 58.5%, so we're about 2% above the average of these properties. And we looked at Harris County, which is Houston, Dallas, Travis, which is Austin, Bear, which is San Antonio, Collins outside Dallas, Fort Bend's outside Houston, Williamson's outside Austin, and then border counties, Hidalgo, Webb, which is Laredo, and Cameron, which is Brownsville. So we're not out of line. We're pretty close to even places like Dallas, Tarrant. You know, Dallas is 51%, we're 58. Travis is 55, we're 58. It's not like totally out of line. We're a little higher because we don't have as much industry in El Paso as they do. Now let's look at the commercial, the F1s. Now, people's definition of commercial can be all over the place. We're strictly looking at commercial real property, not including the big industrial stuff, not including the business person property, strictly commercial F1 property. The average is 18.8% of the roll. Okay, as you can see, 72% of the roll is not residential for anybody. And these are like the biggest appraisal districts in Texas. Add some small ones. So the average of these is 18. We go from as low as 10 all the way up to, who's the best one? I think Dallas has the best one at 23. We're at 17. So, yeah.
You know, but if I may, this also just, in all fairness, this is just a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
The problem is that this is happening year after year. So, you know, my office did analysis where, you know, when you look at, let's say if you were to look at this numerical value over the course of 10 years, El Paso is the worst performing, second to Cameron. You know, we're only growing at something like 2.3%.
Yeah, but the problem is what industry has come to El Paso. I see lots of companies like Boeing shutting down. I don't see new companies coming in that employ people. You know, it's nice when they open a hotel. It's nice when they open a call center. What are the quality of the wages in those jobs? You know, it's a lot different when you have a Boeing or a Toyota opening up rather than another hotel or another call center. And I'm not trying to slam anybody in economic development or anything. There's a lot of factors involved. But the bottom line is we don't have a lot of commercial properties coming into El Paso. And that's not an appraisal district problem. That's an overall problem to the region. And I don't have the answer. You know, if I had the answer, I would run for office or something. All I'm doing is telling you what I see. And this is what I see. We're not the greatest on percentage of commercial property, but we're not the worst. We're in the pack. And the big cities in the Golden Triangle where everybody wants to live in Texas, they're the ones that are in the 20s, and nobody else is except for Hidalgo. So we're kind of where everybody else is for better or worse.
And
All
David,
right,
can I
let's
ask,
talk-
that's on total value? You're talking total
Yeah,
value?
this is market value. This is not taxable value. Okay?
Thank you.
And the reason that we have to use market value is because that's what the state collects from the appraisal districts. They do not collect the taxable value of the categories. They only collect the market value of the categories. Okay, let's talk lawsuits. And like I said, this was the impetus for why we changed our estimate. Because we were saying, okay, look at lawsuits. How many lawsuits settle in 1 year? Hardly any. Most of them drag out 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So that's why we decided to kick out the time period of how we're going to look at the changes in the roll from just 1 year to the lifetime of the roll. Okay, last year in 2018, we had the highest number of lawsuits filed over the last 10 years in the appraisal district by almost 50%. So that's telling me that people are filing more lawsuits. And we're saying, well, hey, we got our litigation fund that's supposed to alleviate this. It's a trend statewide. That this is like a demand shift on lawsuits. Agents are filing more lawsuits because they can make more money on the lawsuits, and the appraisal districts have significant structural problems in taking cases to court, as we learned in our legislative update class this week. One of the lawyers was quite distraught about it. Okay, let's look at percentage of the roll under lawsuits. As you can see, we've been steadily increasing. Now this is, basically I'm saying in 2016, 8.2% of all the value on the roll, this is before the likely rendered adjustment, had lawsuits filed on it. But we've been decreasing. So that shows me that maybe the reserve for litigation is helping us. Because we dropped from 8.2 to 6.3 to 5.27. Now remember from this chart, the number of lawsuits filed is still going up, but the value of the accounts that the lawsuits are filed on is going down. You can kind of blow off 2019 because people, the 60 days isn't even up yet for people to file their lawsuits. Okay, let's talk about once there is a lawsuit, once we settle the lawsuit, how much value do we lose? In 2018, we lost about total 16.5% of the value that was under lawsuit. Now, if you notice, we have been decreasing since we put in the reserve. So not only is less value being filed on the lawsuits, but we're losing less of the value on the accounts that the suits are filed on. I'm not going to say it's totally due to the reserve, but I mean, you guys wanted some metrics, and these are some metrics. Take it how you will. I've explained many times we've got two opposing trends. We know that statewide tax agents are filing more lawsuits, so the trend is up. But we also know that us having the reserve is retarding the effects of that, so there's a trend down. But how do you measure how much of it is due to the upward thing and how much is due to the downward?
I just want to jump in real quick because there's a glaring thing here. What happened between 2012 and 2015?
That was
The refinery.
settled Western.
That's
Okay, that
when
was
we,
Western in 2012, but we go to 2013. Is that still Western?
yes.
Because we're still showing the same curve downwards to a low of 15.2. Then we
In-
go back up.
Well,
2012, with Western Refinery, we had multiple years that were settled in the same year. And so that's why it may have then
well,
started going.
that's not going to affect this because this is 2012 lawsuits regardless of when they settled. So This was a lawsuit that was filed in 2012. It could have been settled in 2016, could have been settled in 2013, could have been settled in 2012. Now, when you dig down underneath the graph, there were maybe like less than 300 lawsuits settled that year. So one large lawsuit will have a greater impact in that year because there's less lawsuits to spread it over than out here where we have more lawsuits. So one individual lawsuit is not as impacting on the total.
And if y'all remember the last 3 years since we've gotten that reserve, we've settled with a waiver with the refinery since Tesoro bought it. Same with the electric company. We don't have lawsuits out, and those are our biggest property owners in El Paso County. So that makes a difference as to how we're able to, the value loss. We have more protests, but it's on less, lower value.
I'm just, because that looks like a pretty volatile chart. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's,
It's just like elections. When they say all elections are local, all lawsuits are particular to that particular property. The facts on that property have a big impact on what the loss of the lawsuit. But the biggest thing I want you to leave here with is some people are saying, oh, you guys just pulled a number out of the air and took it off, and why did you use 2.8? And nobody told us what was going to happen, and mea culpa, that was our fault. This is an evolutionary process. Like I said, when we started, we weren't doing anything like this. We were just strictly looking at accounts that were still under protest, and we're estimating how much they were going to lose. And from there, we turned into how much is the roll going to lose. And first we went to how much is the roll going to lose over a year, and now we're at how much is the roll going to lose forever, and try to estimate that. The big thing that I want to emphasize to you is in 2009, we were off on our estimate of loss over the life of the roll by 159%. That had to come out of the taxing entity's pocket. In 2010, we were off by 162%. Now remember, at this point, we were still looking at individual properties. So then in 2012, they said, hey, you need to change the way that you're doing this stuff. But we still were off by 130%. Now, we've talked to other appraisal districts in the state, and some appraisal districts just tell taxing entities, that's what the value is. If there's some loss, that's on you. It's on you to decide how much money you're going to set aside to pay these refunds. We don't have anything to do with it. We're just going to tell you what the value is now, and whatever happens in the future, good luck.
So the counties that tell, the appraisal districts that tell you that, which ones are they?
Well, we know for sure that Jefferson, which is Beaumont, does that. They do not adjust their estimates. But then there are other appraisal districts that do, like Travis with Austin. They adjust just like we do. Now, I'm not saying they did as much of an adjustment as we did, but they make the adjustments. Now, remember, you're going to lose this money. The question is, are we going to tell you how much you're going to lose now so you can budget for it? Or are you just going to have to pull it out of the air 3 years down the road when the refund hits you for Western Refinery or the Outlet Mall or something? We're trying to help the entities. If the entities don't like that, everybody says, quit doing that. Fine, but I know when we talked to Commissioner's Court and the county judge asked Wally Hartgrove, do you want to be making this estimate? He said, no. I don't have the expertise. The appraisal district has more expertise in this matter than I do. And that's why we're trying to do it. And we're just, I'm not trying to mess up people's budgets. I'm not trying to screw up the effective rate calculations. I'm just trying to make sure that every entity is going to have enough money that they're not going to come up short at some point roll. You know, as you can see, at the end of 1 year, you're not losing all the money that you're going to lose. So you guys are going to end up with a budget surplus at the end of your fiscal year. The question is, what do you do with it? Now, we gave you this number so you can put that money away in a reserve, and sooner or later, the lawsuits are going to catch up to you for that year. It may not be 1 year, may not be 2 years, it could be 3 years, it could be 4 years. But they're going to catch up to you. So we're giving you that money in these estimates. You will have that money. You will have a surplus at the end of the fiscal year. You will be able to pay these refunds. But I'm not saying my estimate is perfect either. I mean, I could still be short. 1 year, we were over, but 1 year out of 10. So the question is, this money is going to come out of your pocket one way or the other. Would you rather I tell you about it now so you can fix your budgets, or would you rather I give you more money, you know, a bigger value now so it looks good on paper, your effective rate goes down, but 3 years from now, someone's going to come knocking at the door and say, give me $300,000. We just settled the lawsuit on Western. We just settled the lawsuit on Alamo. We settled the lawsuit on the electric company. Whatever. This is all this is. So at the end of the year, when you have this surplus, it's totally on the back of the governing bodies of each taxing entity of what are you going to do with it. Are you going to put it in a reserve so you can have the money when the refunds come due, or are you going to spend it on something else? I mean, I can't make you save the money. All I can do is give you the money. It's up to you whether you save it for the refunds or whether you have some other need that is more important, that you'll use it on that. And then when the refunds come in, just cross your fingers and hope you don't get hit too hard.
Basically, what we're telling the entities is, here's your total appraisal roll. Out of that appraisal roll, what's left under protest, we're giving a percentage of potential loss. If we don't hit that potential loss in a year, you could still have that potential loss in the next couple of years. So it's up to the entities to determine. They don't have to listen to our numbers. I mean, they can set whatever. Williamson County was told, I talked to the chief appraiser there, and when he first came on a few years back, he was talking to them, and they said, no, up the percentage of potential loss on that likely rendered on the stuff that's left under protest. We don't want to have to deal with a shortage. And we did visit, we've got some school districts here that were really worried about it, and when we did this, they were very happy about it. So we can't please everybody, and we understand that. What we're going to do going forward is our mistake, mine and David's mistake, was we didn't realize what we were going to do until the end. And everything had already gone out. By the time we visited with everybody, they had already had the numbers. So we're going to start when we visit the entities in the spring, and we're going to run some kind of down and dirty estimates. What would it be if we stayed this way? We're going to give them some numbers to look at. What might we be looking at as we get a couple of months further down the protest process? And then we'll be working with them throughout that to say, okay, this is what you're going to get. Again, we're here for all of the taxing entities in El Paso County. There's 35, 36 taxing entities in El Paso County. We have to do the same for everybody. So we have 2 entities that are kind of unhappy how this turned out, but I have the others that were like, okay, we're good, move on. Let's move on and go on. They've got other things that are more important than this because they still set the rate for what they want. What we heard from them is, hey, could you have just given us a heads up? We said, yeah, you're right. We were off on that. So we are changing the process a little bit so we can bring them into the conversation earlier with some estimated numbers as to where we're going to go going forward.
Like I said, this is an evolutionary process. And what we typically do is we typically make this calculation on how much we're going to knock off, like the weekend before the certified totals come out. And the reason we did that in the past was because we wanted the latest and greatest changed numbers from all the years, so we know exactly how much we've lost in the prior years. But we don't have to wait till the last minute. We can do it in March before we go out to the tax agencies and just use the totals then. And then we can tell everybody when we go on visit and say, okay, this is the number we're going to use this year, so be ready. And hopefully that will assist everybody in setting their rates. And we apologize. It was not our intention to mess people's budget calculations up. It wasn't our intent to cause problems in budgeting, cause problems in adopting tax rates. That's just the way the numbers play out. And we're going to try to do better next year, give you a heads up enough time ahead of time that when they start doing their projections for 2020, we'll already know how much we're planning to knock off, and that can help them in their budget estimates and what they want.
Do y'all have any questions? That's the end
I
of
have
the
a couple
presentation.
comments. I understand now what has happened. I think there's pros and cons to both sides. Frankly, I think a loss that was estimated that was not high enough is not good. I also think a loss that is overestimated is not good. I think the taxing entities have a responsibility themselves to set budgets. And yes, can they set their rates? Sure, they can. But whenever I haven't seen any governmental agency's budget, going down, just like ours.
Right, yeah.
We always are going this way. And so if we're going one way and then not arbitrarily, but all of a sudden we decide to go a different way, if I'm one of the taxing entities and I've seen, okay, the loss that we've experienced is greater than what they've estimated, I can then start working that even into my own budget as a taxing entity. And then this hits me. If I work that further into it, I have no choice, I think, but to increase rates if we're going to have. And I know you say we don't have to, but we have budgets also. So we kind of do.
But the value, and here's one thing I think that is confusing with everybody is the value is still there. They're going to get the revenue. So they are going to have the revenue, the property tax revenue, they are going to have that because the value is still there. They'll still be applying the rate to that value, to the certified value or the approved value. So the number, they're still getting the revenue.
Yeah, understood that we are, but without knowing that adjustment is occurring on how you're estimating the loss makes it real challenging. And so I think you understand that point of just expressing,
Sure.
explaining that earlier.
I would like to stress to the board too that as soon as we saw the magnitude of the increase, we went to go visit the major taxing entities like the city, the EPISD, to let them know what happened, why it happened, how we got this number, and so they could be aware. Now, it was late in the process. They had already made their estimates for the budget for this year. And that's what upset them.
But like David said, we have already talked to them. In fact, I talked to Wally Hargrove today and assured him that our schedule going forward, we may not, like you said, go as low as we were because we were undervaluing or underestimating. We may have overestimated because we were very conservative and seeing what was the highest one we had, so we went with that one. So we'll come up with something in between, but we'll be communicating with them more on that. Again, like David was saying, this was the first snapshot we had at looking at this was the week that we were certifying. We're like, and when we were having the issues with the entity saying, what can you do? And we started looking at those numbers. Wow, we need to do something. So we did that. Now, going forward, we may end up with something a little more compromising that will help all of the entities. But remember, whatever we do, we've got to do with everybody. So we'll be
and I
visiting with
understand.
them more.
But on that note too of being conservative here and choosing the highest that we've seen in the last 10 years, I get it. I understand. You're all the CAD's kind of desire or conservative approach to a number of items, which I think is fine. But if we end up with a big surplus in our taxing entities, I argue that's not good either. You say, well, then you did a bad job budgeting. Budgeting, when we budget, we want to get as close to it as possible. To have to have over budgeted 20% or under budgeted 20% is a problem. And so on my personal finances, yes, I agree. I get it. I too would like to have a little cushion and a little savings there. But if we do this to the taxing entities 1 or 2 times, then all of a sudden in our next budget, I would not be shocked to see them expecting it and counting on it.
Right.
And then if it doesn't come through,
Then
guess
what
who's the bad
happens?
guy
Yeah.
again?
That's why I
We
think
are.
when,
So if we're going to do this, and then the last question is, why didn't we do it in 2009 whenever we were 159% off, or 10, or 11, or 12, or 13, or 14, or 15, or 16, or 17, or 18?
But we did, like I said, we changed the methodology in 2012 because of concerns from the city. But remember, none of this is mandated by the property entities to make this adjustment. All Dinah has the duty to do is report what she thinks those properties under protest are going to end up being. And this is strictly as a courtesy to the entities and trying to help people out that we're making these adjustments. And when it was pointed out to us that our previous methodology was no longer working, and really the reason it came about was because we were ending up having less value under protest when we certified than we had in previous years. Once we had the new system, we were getting down. When we were on our old system before the one we were on now, we were like sweating bullets trying to make 95% by July 25th. Once we went to the new system, we were getting like 97%, 98%. That doesn't leave a lot of slack in the value to account for this. Before, when I would just look at the stuff that was still under protest and estimate what it was going to settle at, there was enough accounts under protest and enough of them that didn't settle that low so that there was still enough cushion to take up the slack for the lawsuits, for the motions, for the late exemptions. It wasn't an issue. Once we started cutting it closer, then we started coming up short on value, and then that's when we started running the shortages. That's why we start kicking it out a year and see how much does the whole roll lose, not just the accounts that are under protest. And we were going along fat and happy until we got another wake-up call from one of the entities that said, hey, you had an awful lot of lawsuits settled this year, and you had to pay an awful lot of refunds. And so we said, okay, let's take another look at what we're doing. And that's why we changed it this year. Now, unfortunately, we didn't anticipate we did it so late in the process, and we didn't anticipate such a big adjustment that we didn't give anybody a heads up. We just thought, oh, we'll tweak the percentage, and then it'll be a little bit more, we'll be fine. Well, the problem in El Paso is this is not Dallas, this is not Austin, this is not San Antonio. We don't have double-digit increases over here. We're lucky to get 3% increases in El Paso. And so when you take 1% off, we're basically wiping out 1/3 of the increase. And when, the city has got a lot of bonds, they've got a lot of projects that they're working on, they've got a lot of pressure from public safety, from roads. They need every penny that they can get, and I feel for them. But when you knock 1/3 of their increase off, that's going to impact it. Even though it might only be 1%, it still is coming to them. I mean, the first thing that happened after we talked to them is everybody turned around to the CFO and said, okay, what do we got to cut from the budget to make this happen? So, I understand, and I'm sorry for the impact, but
David,
we're
Mr.
just trying to.
Mr. Taylor has a question.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, what I'm understanding, we can set money aside that's rolling it from one budget year to another budget year. How do you account for that money? Are we meeting the legal requirements?
The entity has to account for that, not us. That's you. That if the entity wants to set something aside, that's something you have to work with your CFO and your budget and everything. That has nothing to do with us. And we don't tell you how much.
Basically, you'll have a surplus in your property.
Do we
tax.
deal with the legislative budget board people?
No, ma'am. No, sir.
We don't.
No, sir. No, sir, we don't.
So
Any other
the
questions? I know we
theory
need to move
behind
on.
this is you're going to end up with a surplus at the end of your fiscal year. But the purpose of that surplus is to pay future refunds that are still going to hit the roll.
You mentioned like 4 years later we paid off a lawsuit.
Yeah,
What
could
do we do with that large sum of money over the 4-year period? Do we have to start another chart of accounts?
It goes into fund balance.
No, it's under the restricted, you set aside, every year your fund
But
balance
that's
has
money set
different.
aside.
It's a
Are we
rest-
getting any gain for that money sitting
Sure.
aside?
It's an
Well,
You
interest.
can-
it
yeah,
depends
you
if
can
you
invest it.
or something.
Can we can
Yes.
do that?
I'll tell you firsthand, we had to pay back the outlets $1 million, over $1 million. We knew we were going to have to do it for 3 years. We would set aside the money, usually about $300,000 running, so that at the end of that time, we knew we were going to have $1 million. And you put it in a restricted fund balance, and that means you can't use it for anything else. You could invest it. I'm not sure whether we did or not. But essentially, it's just sitting there with a purpose, and that's why it's restricted. That the only use it's going to be is to pay that bill when the bill comes due for the taxes that you're not going to get.
That's a whole new account.
Yes.
It has to be maintained, right?
No, well, more or less, but it's under your general fund. And have you adopted your budget yet this year? You should have, when you adopt your
Yes.
budget, the
Yeah.
different areas of your fund balance, and each one of those is going to have an amount.
And like I said, if you don't want to put that in your general fund to pay the future
You don't have
refund,
to.
you don't have to. I mean, we're not forcing anybody to use this money to pay property tax refunds. If you have something that comes up that's more important or more urgent, you can do whatever you want with that money. But all I'm saying is sooner or
Eventually
later,
have to
you're gonna
call.
have to pay
Catch
that
up,
much
yeah.
money in refunds. So if you don't save it in your fund balance, it's gonna come from somewhere else.
And truly, the bottom line on that is the entities know that there are these lawsuits. There's no doubt in anybody's mind. These lawsuits are there, and we're going to pay something. What that something is unknown, but the amount that you've given each year is just a statistical possibility, and you need to save that money because it's coming.
But what has happened is you've increased that
Yes.
amount. We were accustomed to another amount.
Right.
And this increased it after budgets were
Yep.
passed, and therein lies the issue, the concerns, because we did account for that money, but with this change in the calculation, we didn't account for enough. Put away into that.
No, I will say that I have not heard anything from any school district. about there being
I'll
a
follow
problem.
up with the district.
So
No,
I don't, and I'm not saying that there's not a problem. All I'm saying is I have not heard from anybody that it is a problem.
Thank you
We're not
very
one of
much.
the two entities. The city and the county. We're good.
Well, David, thank you for the presentation. I mean, there's clearly a lot more information in this presentation than what was presented to the city, probably because a lot of the concerns it is that they raised, and ultimately, I think it's a good thing. I mean, just a couple notes. I mean, when I hear about just reassuring that there's no losses to the entities, and at least speaking as putting the commissioner hat on, to me it's not about the losses to the entities. I mean we're going to be okay, and I feel like we budget adequately where there's enough contingency accounts and things like that would take care of any losses. But it seems to me that there's been some sort of frustration, at least probably dating back to the Western Refining, under Joyce Wilson, where the city had expressed to you all some concern about the methodology, and that concern seems to still exist today. I mean, hopefully, we're moving in the right direction, that there's a little bit more clarity. But just like just in talking with you all, I heard different rationales as to why, how much is held back, right? I mean, what one conversation that we had is that the goal of holding back a certain percentage is to make sure that the entities are above water for 1 year, right? Then you gave me back the historical analysis to make sure it is that the entities don't go below the certified value over the course of 6 or 7 or ever, right? And I think,
mean, our goal would be that, but we can't guarantee that. So
Right,
if we could at least guarantee 1 year, that's probably a miscommunication on me. If we can at least try to hold 1 year, and then the years after that try to hold, but we don't know, so we
Right.
can't guarantee that we can hold that number for 10 years
Right.
or for 5
and,
years.
and I don't know if one of the biggest issues is just communication, but it's just, I think that's where these differences and the different rationales and the different methodologies, I mean, a lot of what you're saying, I get what you're saying, but it's just that it erodes the confidence of the taxing entities. And I think that's what happened this year, is that everybody was caught off guard. Then there's articles in the El Paso Inc., there's articles in the El Paso Times, and it doesn't reflect well on this organization. It doesn't reflect well on the cities, because it looks like there's just a lack of confidence, and it's hard to rebuild that confidence, in the coming years. So, this information, again, it's a lot more substantive, than I think what was presented to the city. Showing that the value lost, the number of lawsuits, the value of the lawsuits. Those are all helpful things to know. I think there's still a lot of things it is that we need to settle. One of the big questions that I've had is, how is it that your all's values are holding up through this whole process? The CAD's values. How is it holding up at the ARB? How is it holding up in lawsuits? There needs to be some sort of quantifiable methodology for the board to evaluate that the Central Appraisal District values are being lost for whatever reason. But that's, to me, I think that's one of the difficult things that we need to still sort out. Are the settlements just way off compared to what the Central Appraisal District had appraised? And I'm not getting into the value or telling you what it is, but there needs to be some sort of explanation to the taxing entities or to the board of where these losses are coming from. I mean, so when you all assess property, let's say particularly in the areas that it's being lost, F1 and other areas, is it holding up at a rate of 70%? Is it 65? Is it 80? I mean, those are the kind. Am I making sense?
Yeah, we can get you that. That information comes from what we preliminarily send out in your preliminary tax roll, and the notice values that go out, and then at the end, when we send you the certifieds, that shows you the overall difference. Then what we do is when we do our value study for the state, the property value study, we have the newer numbers.
Right.
We can show the difference, so we can come up.
But I'm saying, but in the historical losses, at the end of the day, let's say somebody files a lawsuit today in 2019, and it gets settled in 2023. How much of your all's original value held?
Oh, you'll see that when we get to executive session, we've got something to show you that might answer that question for you.
And I think that's that's a big part. And again, and you're right that other counties are different. And I'm sure other counties are having the reverse problem where, I mean, and that was the whole point of truth in taxation, right? Was to address the growth in taxes and lower the effective tax rate. And I'm sure that they're probably predicting a number that there's going to be a certain value lost, that's going to be accounted for the entities. But I think where it is, are we falling in line with other comparable counties. I mean, Hidalgo is a county of comparable size, of comparable market value. I mean, those are the types of things it is that I'd like to see, but I think those are the metrics that hopefully moving forward, like I said, this data is, I think, a step in the right direction, but those are the questions that are still outstanding for me as, you know, as we look at this.
So maybe you can come back to us with some of those
Sure.
thoughts and questions
happy to.
answered. Thank you.
I hope you guys,
Yeah, this was a
Got
great
something out of it,
presentation. I
and-
learned a lot.
good.
What does LR mean again?
Likely.
Thank you.
What's left of it. See, what it is the chief appraiser can put the rendered amount that a property owner says the value's worth, but they never tell us. They just say the value's too high, so that's why, you know.
You know, and I'm sorry, and you presented a good, you see, and you showed the percentage of the roll, or you had the number of lawsuits are increasing, but the value of those lawsuits are decreasing. But how did that factor into your methodology if you're looking at, like, let's say a 6-year, if you're going back, you know, a certain number of years, if the trend, and that's what
We
I'm
just
saying,
look at
as we evaluate litigation
The
reserve.
issue that we have on that report is the longer you go, the more of a loss there is. Like on 2018, I'm not going to see big, huge losses over what I estimated because only 1 year went by and we were estimating it based on a 1 year time frame. So I should be pretty close. When you start to see it as 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, once the lawsuits that like Western that dragged on for like 3 years, the Fountains dragged on for 4 years. When those big lawsuits that are multi-year finally settle, that could be like 5 years down the road from the initial time that the role was created.
And we'll get into a little bit in executive that.
But those categories that you mentioned where you said, like, so the late exemptions, sorry, there were like 4 different categories that you mentioned. I mean, those should be able to be reportable numbers, you know, to the board. I mean, or that should be public. I know you mentioned that there would probably be some difficulty in tracking that, but I mean, if those are some of the issues that could be driving down that number, it would be helpful to know. I mean, how much is it driving it down?
We can look at some different. I think this one was helpful in the matrix for the legal for litigation. It helped a little bit understand that. We'll look at some of the others and see what we can come up with. Thank you, Commissioner Pettis.
So that
Eventually,
would
we're
take
going to get you happy. I'm working on it. I'm working on it, Commissioner.
That'll take us to agenda item number 8, our taxpayer liaison report. Good evening.
Good evening. Tracy Carter, Taxpayer Liaison Officer. I wanted to let you all know that the ARB was exceptionally efficient this year. Like Dinah had mentioned, they passed over the rules on July 16th. And part of it was due because the chairman changed some of their procedures. He decided to bring in timers to make hearings 15 minutes. So it had helped a lot. The hearings went by a whole lot quicker. This year we had 24,523 protests. 7,647 protests was heard by the ARB. 2,219 of those was by the property owners. 5,428 cases were from property tax agents. Again, in the blue folder, you'll find the evaluation forms that I have received from May 2019 to July 2019. I created a chart based on the 14 responses. And attached to each of the evaluation forms, you'll find my report on them. And I did speak with the chairman and secretary about the taxpayers' concerns about the issues that they had experienced with the appraisal review board. And some of the comments that were written down on the 14 comments, some said they seem very businesslike and lack of human value. The process needs to be simplified. Another comment, the appraisal review board was scrupulous, reviewing all the materials that were presented. The board's questions were courteous and relevant to our request for a lower property valuation. Another comment was the appeal board was on time and delivered great service. Smiling faces make a person feel welcome. I felt very comfortable, and I felt that my case was heard. Another one was the board talks so fast I can't understand anything they say. They don't explain the reasoning at all. They all use the info that is only convenient to Central Appraisal District and have no regard for the property owner. Another last opinion I will give you all was opinions of the 4 ARB members vary too much to be accurate and informed. So these are some of the concerns from our property owners. This year we got 640 surveys, electronic surveys. And I wanted to let you all know that I did meet with Judge Linda Chu. So inside you'll find our press release for Appraisal Review Board members. And here is the timeline that the judge had put on us for her to appoint the Appraisal Review Board members. So right now, for 2020, we'll have 15 current ARB members that will be on the list for 2020. 10 members are up for reappointment, and we'll have 10 vacancies. So the total positions are going to be open will be 20. The judge, she would have to appoint 20 ARB members. I also presented the evaluation forms to the judge also. And another thing that is off of your plate, the legislator has assigned the duty of appointing the ARB chairman and the secretary to Judge Linda Chu. And thank you all very much. You all have any questions for me?
I don't guess so. Thank you very much.
But thank you all.
And that would take us to agenda item number 9, the Chief Appraiser report.
Okay, guys, our folks are back out in the field. So if anybody calls and says, what is this person with a CAD shirt doing in my neighborhood? They're doing their job. They're back out in the field, picking up new construction, permits, reviewing the county. 2020, again, we're going to do a reappraisal to kind of clean up from this year. The last reappraisal was in 18. So this will be another year of making sure we've gotten everything, and then 2021 will be a full-blown. But we still will be checking certain cost tables. We'll be reviewing the commercial full, complete review. Same with business personal property. So we've gotten that started. I also have customer evaluations on our staff. Ms. Carter had it on the A or B members, and I have it on our staff that worked with the public. And we had 97% excellent good rating, about 2.5, 2.7 fair, and less than 0.5% was poor. We handled those immediately. Those were usually because they didn't get the value that they wanted, or they got confused and didn't understand what was required of them. We had a lot of comments, very positive comments. But I'm going to read just this one to you because I think it's just awesome. The process has changed for the better. About 10 years ago, my experience with this process was very adversarial. Staff back then was arrogant. Today's staff is respectful and courteous. Night and day, way to go. And 10 years, that's when me and David jumped in. Nice. And Tony Delgado, and so, I had to say that. Yeah. I had to tell you that one. Legislatively, there have been some changes. Right off the bat, what is going to affect you more, like Ms. Carter said, the Board of Directors will no longer be appointing the Appraisal Review Board chairman and secretary. That's now going to be done by the local administrative judge, the judge that will be interviewing the ARB members and appointing them to the panels will also be appointing them as officers. So that's been taken off of your plate. Appraisal Review Board members, we're back to, they can only serve 6 years total, two-year increments, but a total term of 6 years. If they leave during that 6 years, they cannot come back. And after 6 years, they cannot come back. A few years ago, remember legislation said you could take a year off and then you could be reappointed. Now you cannot be reappointed. So that's something new that will come in for the Appraisal Review Board. We are already starting our courses. From May to now, we've already had 4 courses for our staff. We have 10 more courses scheduled through the end of the year. These are appraisal courses, law and rule updates, different seminars, customer service. So we have a lot of education going on for our staff. Now to kind of something negative. With the shooting that happened, I do want to inform the board we were extremely lucky that none of our staff or their immediate family were hurt, were affected. We did have staff members that had family members that were working there or that had been there, had just left, or were just on their way. One of our employees' daughter was actually a cashier, and her shift would have been that Saturday morning at the register where he first came in at, and they had just changed her shift, and she wasn't there that Saturday. But if they hadn't changed her shift, she would have been. So it's affected our employees. We had one employee that told me coming to work on Monday, knew nobody, had no connection to anybody that was there, but when she drove by, it was very traumatic, and she broke down. So we, Monday morning I was here, I greeted each employee individually, sat down and visited with each employee. We immediately got HR, Ms. Melendez, and her staff were fantastic. They started looking around for counselors. We had a counselor come in Thursday to visit with our staff, whoever wanted to visit with them. We gave them, we even had a class going on, and we allowed them time off from their class to come up and visit with a counselor. We will probably follow up with that in the next couple of weeks. I think our staff really appreciated the fact the counselor has, we have a 1-800 number. We have a local number that they can call on the phone and talk with them. We also have other counselors that they can make appointments with. That we've always had that, and so we've, reiterated that. Rick Medina and his staff went over all of our security procedures, reminded our staff what our security procedures are, reminded our staff of what their responsibility is. We have a secure door in the back where the employees park. Close the door. We have a responsibility as citizens to, watch out for ourselves a little bit. We can't always expect somebody else to do it. So we went over the evacuation plan. We've moved some people around that felt like may have trouble getting out, where they're more accessible to the doors. So we were very, very much on top of it. Our HR called around to find out where shirts were being sold. Lanyards, one of our employees found lanyards, El Paso Strong. We are allowing the staff on Wednesdays, if they have an El Paso Strong shirt, no matter what the brand is, and we're telling them whatever brand, because they're hard to find, as long as the money that you're spending on the shirt is not going to somebody's profit, it's going to either the Community Foundation or the Paso del Norte Foundation. They can wear shirts on Wednesday with jeans and tennis shoes, and we had a bunch of them this Wednesday that wore those shirts. So, and we are taking up donations and collections for the Community Foundation, and so we are very much involved in that. We are staying on top of our staff. We had some really close calls with some employees that really shook them up. If it wasn't for the fact that they had stopped to get their car washed instead of going there, they would have been right there. One of our employees' mother looks like was walking out when he was either walking into case it or walking out after he cased it to go get his gun, and she was loading up her car and heading home. So, the closeness of what could have. So, and a lot of our employees are attending, the different services that they're having, and so we're very much on top of that. But I wanted you to know how our employee base was affected, and that we were very lucky that no one employed here, our immediate family, was hurt. So I just wanted to catch up on that. And then one last kind of a nice thing. I was approached by the Texas Association of Appraisal Districts. There is an opening on the Board of Directors for the International Association of Assessing Officers for Region 1, which is the Western region. And they approached me and asked me if I would run and represent Texas. So I said, I don't know if I'll qualify. I submitted my application and my resume, and I got a notification that I am in the running. There were 3 of us, so I have this somewhere. Instead of pins, I'm taking these. Everybody gets to have one. Everybody takes pins, that you write with, and you just throw in a drawer, or a pin that you put here with somebody's face on it. Well, you don't want my face. So I did something a little different that can actually go into a suitcase. There were 3 of us running. One of the folks has already dropped out, so it's just me and one other person running for the position.
Thank you.
And I thank the board for the support and hey, we're out
We're
there.
moving on
We're
up.
out there, yes. We can do better, as Commissioner Pettis lets us know, and we will. We will definitely. And that's all I have in my report. If y'all have any questions or anything that you would like for us to address.
Thank you very much. And that will take us to agenda item number 10. The board will convene into closed session under Texas Government Code Chapter 551, Section 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.076. And the time is now 7:25 p.m. and the board will re-adjourn into open session under agenda item number 11. Reconvene into open session. Anybody, you want me to make the motion?
I wrote it down. I think.
You have it written down? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll move that the appraisal district file an appeal on property litigation A, B, C, D, and E as recommended by legal counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Velarde.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Pettis. Motion made by Mr. Al Velarde and seconded by Mr. Chuck Taylor to authorize the El Paso CAD to file an appeal on A, B, C, D, and E. Tim? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
And Madam Chairman, we'll circulate a written resolution giving us written authorization
Okay.
to file those appeals.
So you can sign those.
Okay, and that would take us to adjournment. It's bedtime, guys. Gotta go home. Thank you very much.
MPO,
board
I have
members.
MPO tomorrow night.
I thought you were gonna say now, and I was gonna say, oh, Vince. Oh, I'm sorry. The time is now straight up 8 o'clock.
Okay, no worries. All right, hey, man.